My family isn't rich, but we aren't dirt poor either. For as long as I can remember, my parents and I have lived in a two-bedroom yellow house out in the country. Sure, roof shingles fall off every now and then, but when the heavy rains came, the living room ceiling leaks. But for the most part, the place was embodied safety and warmth. Of course, there's something about the house that makes it unique, at least to me. When I was 10, I discovered the Knock Knock game. I called it that. It wasn't very imaginative back then, and then the name seemed fitting enough. The game started late one night when I was meant to be fast asleep. It was summer, and my mind was too occupied with planning the next day's adventures to drop off into sleep. I sat there in bed, flashlight grasped in mouth, pen and paper in hand. I remember I was drawing a fort diagram when I got the urge to sneeze. With a muffled achoo, my flashlight was flung from my mouth. It rolled off my bed and across the room, coming to a stop with a slight thunk against the opposite wall. I held my breath for a moment, listening. My parents were strict about my bedtime, and I didn't want to risk about being grounded for any length of the time my summer vacation. A minute passed, then two. Nothing else seemed to stir in the house. I let out a relieved sigh and sucked it back in a moment later when I realized I heard a light knock come from the wall where the flashlight had hit. I sat there in bed, silent and still, hoping the sound had been nothing more than my imagination. Another knock sounded a few seconds later. Slowly, I crept out of the bed and tiptoed my way across the room. I pressed my ear up to the wall and gently rapped my knuckles 3 times against the surface. I only had to wait a second for a response. Knock, knock, knock. The repetition of my own knocking rhythm both frightened and delighted me. I knew whatever was responding to me had to be sentient. Was it a ghost, an intelligent critter, the house itself? To my youthful mind, the possibilities were endless. I sat there in my room that night playing the knocking game with my newly acquired friend. Every sequence of thumps I concentrated back to me. Occasionally, the other entity would add some of their own, usually a quick succession of knocks, as if they were trying to convey something. Eventually, dawn broke and I heard my parents waking. The knock stopped, and I went back to bed. The next day, I planned to conduct my own investigation. I knew the wall across from my room was shared by my parents' closet. I had been in there a few times prior, but the heads, the heaps of leaping clothes and musty boxes never provided all that interesting to me. Before heading to the kitchen for breakfast, I poked my head into the small walk-in room. Just like before, it was a mess of clothes and objects, but no other worldly beings. I meant to examine that shared wall some more, but it was shooed out of the house for a better part of the day. My parents were always doing that, encouraging me to go out and play. The night I waited until the house was silent and crept back up to my wall. I knocked once and waited. Immediately, the other player surfaced, and knocked. Game resumed. I played the knocking game for the next several nights. Each following day, get my, I tried my best dis- to discourage who or what was responsible for the knocks before I was exiled from the house. But each time I was unsuccessful. Eventually, curiosity got the best of me. One morning at the kitchen table, I worked up the nerve and told my dad about the knocking. He looked annoyed, if not a bit angry. You're supposed to be in bed by 9. What were you doing up so late? I mumbled an apologetic response and pressed the topic further. My father shrugged his shoulders when I asked what the source of the noise could be. He responded courteously, "It's probably mice. I'll put some traps out this afternoon." I could see he was done with the topic, and when I didn't subscribe to his theory, I didn't say any more. That night, the knocking didn't return. I attempted to get my friend to play the knocking game, but silence was the only thing that greeted my knocks. I tried for a response of any kind for a long time after that, Weeks passed, then months, and finally years, but nothing ever happened. I'm 15 now, nearly 16. The knocking game had faded to the back of my mind, so when I heard raps against the wall last Friday night, they startled me. Knock, knock, knock. It was the same sequence that had started our game all those years ago. Thoughts of my invisible playmate resurfaced, and I rushed across the room, my knuckles thumped against the surface in greeting. It was if it was as if my presence was a catalyst. The once measured raps became a frenzy of beats against the wall. Frightened now, I backed away and threw myself under the covers of my bed. My childhood playmate seemed far more sinister now that I was older. The knocks continued for a little while longer, but then eventually faded into silence. The next day, the knock-knock came, and my friend consumed each waking thought. I was at the point of deeply disturbed by my specter. Who was it? What was it? That time I was determined to find out. Saturday, after a day of spring cleaning, my parents treated themselves to a night out in the city, a rarity for them. I took the opportunity and snuck back into their closet, gave them the amount of trash bags they carried out of the house that day. I was surprised to see that their old clothes and boxes were still littered the floor. Pushing aside the cluster, I made my way to the room's narrow back wall. I knocked, wanting to see what might happen. I held my breath, hoping that my playmate wouldn't emerge. The closet remained silent. I went back to knocking again, just to make sure, and when I did, I noticed something. The echo of my knock had an odd hollow sound. I pressed my ear against the wall surface and rapped some more. There's definitely something strange about the reverberations. I felt along the edges of the wall, running my hand along the wooden baseboards. Then I felt it, an odd gap in the wood. To the naked eye, it looked as if the baseboard was merely chopped, but it was enough of space that I managed to hook a finger into it. I tugged. To my astonishment, the wall swung outwards. It took a few moments for my eyes to adjust to the dark space. When they did, I shuddered with the room, if you could even call it that, was no more than half the size of the closet. The stained wooden floor, house of a small pile of ratty blankets shoved into one corner, and a molded cardboard box. The thing that captured my attention, however, the heavy chains that hung from the rightmost wall. I felt sick to my stomach at the discovery. My mind was a whirl of thoughts, each more horrifying than the next. I didn't know why, but some force compelled me to enter the space, on my knees. I pulled the cardboard box toward me and looked inside. Its contents consisted of a paperback book, crayons, and a handful of newspaper clippings. I put the book to the side for a moment and snatched out the newspaper articles. They were all similar in nature. Missing persons report, missing girl to be precise. I shuffled each scrap of paper and read the titles. Indiana child snatched from yard. 5-year-old Casadrina, white yet to be found after local park searched. Toddler's family amazed they had nothing to do with her disappearance. I looked at the most recent article, one from 12 years prior. Search for 7-year-old James Fields. Nothing. Beneath the headlines was a small blurb and a picture of a young girl, blonde hair, blue-eyed beauty. Feeling anxious, I put the papers down and picked up the book. It was L. Frank Baum's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Opening the burning cover, I saw words scrawled that stopped my heart. The first part read, "From Mom and Dad," and underneath was "to," followed by a series of crossed-out names. Some, but not all, of the names corresponded to the missing girl in the articles. The last to be crossed out was Jane. Beneath that, I saw my own name written. Hands now shaking, I flipped the book and searched for more clues. I came across a bookmark of a blonde hair on page 128. It was a portion of the story where Dorothy seeks help from the Wizard of Oz. There was a crayon, several words and sentences had been circled again and again. I read through them in order to send me back for the first time. I'm only a helpless girl, little girl read the second. It was the last circled line. That really got me, though. Help me, I will help you. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway reached me, and I flung the books and papers back into the box. Rushing, I leapt into the closet and slammed the hidden door back into place. I was just exiting the room when they came through the door. I'm not sure if they saw me exit, but the man I called father gave me an odd look. My mother saying, and then she was beaming. We have good news, she said. We're adopting another child. How would you like a sister? I couldn't speak. It took everything in me to slap on a fake smile and nod. That was the other day since then. They've been talking about keeping a close eye on me. They have made many excuses about why I can't leave the house. I lay awake at night in silence, afraid and wondering what I should do. There are neighbors so close to us, far out in the middle of nowhere. There's only one car, and they have the keys. What should I do? Home no longer feels safe.